Hi, everyone. Welcome to Consider the Lilies podcast. I'm Megan Fevier.
And I'm Brooklyn Whitmer.
Tune in to the latest episode of the podcast.
Available on all streaming platforms.
Rachel, so we are so excited to have you on the podcast. Brooklyn and I have been just so stoked for this conversation and just want to share a little bit about you and what you have been up to. So you are a worship leader, you're an artist, you have new music that's out now, new music you're working on, and just kind of take us through your journey and share a little bit about what all you've been up to.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. This could be a long story, so I'm like trying to shorten it a little bit. So yeah, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised there, wanted to move to Nashville forever, country music, all of that. Kind of was raised on country music. And when I got here in 2017, fall of 2017, so now it's been a little over 6 years, got involved with like worship leading, got involved in some small groups and stuff and started leading worship there. And God just started doing a huge work in my life that now looking back on, I can see like it was almost like God used my love of country music to get me to Nashville, and he completely changed the plans on me. That he knew the plan, but I was like, what's going on? Like, I moved here for country music. I'm not doing Christian music. And he really worked on my heart and gave me a desire to do that, to do Christian music, to write for him specifically, for his people, for church, and lead worship and just encourage. I feel like that's one of my biggest things. Is like, I hope my music and anything I put out is going to encourage people through whatever season. That's what I want to do. I hope I can do that. So
yeah, that's so beautiful. I think hear that turnaround. It's just cool to hear the story that God has for you. Like, sometimes we think it's going to be one way, but then God takes it and be like, oh, but honey, I'm flipping it. And it's that you would have never imagined and more, but it's good, you know?
It's so good.
So good. Yeah. And like, that's how it was for me as well. Like, just, I was pursuing music right away, and that was something that I wanted to do. And then God directed me into acting. And I was like, well, I've never really done this in this way. And, you know, it looks different for everybody. But yeah, it was like, really have to be like, okay, God, like, you're taking me on this path. I trust you in this. And you're just going to have to show me the way, because it's a brand new thing that I didn't think would really happen or didn't really know would happen. But it's like the beauty of the blessing of like following that and just letting him lead. It's just amazing. And I think that's where the testimony is. So.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that like, it's so easy to get kind of like freaked out or scared about it whenever you're walking through it. But then once you like look back from the outside and look back over it, it's one of those like, wow, that's so cool. And like, it's really awesome. There are like so many moments I feel like in my life that I can look back and I'm like, wow, God was all over that. And I was so scared in the moment, but yet the outcome, he still led me through that, you know?
Exactly. And he gives you like the gifts that you have, like he wants to use that and really like, bring like that to like the forefront for his glory. It's not for your for his. And so like we get to like just see that and like realize, okay, what I'm doing like in my life is not meant for me to just bask in. It's meant for him to be glorified. So
and how loving he is with that, like that he is such a personal God, right? Like he knows all of us, and he knows the desires and the gifts and talents and abilities he's given to each person, and every single story is different and unique in how he's writing it. And I love that. Like that, I don't know, I just find peace in that, in a world of like comparing and, you know, saying, oh, this person's doing that or any of that stuff that can kind of create pride or doubt or anything. So many things that social media can do on the negative side, I think sometimes. But then it kind of brings it back to say like, okay, but God's also doing something in each one of our lives that only we can do through him, you know?
Absolutely. Or even like in this town, like in Nashville itself, of compare, like everybody is doing the same thing, whether it's like they're in film or they're in music, like everybody is they're trying to compete to do the same thing. But it's nice to know that we serve a God who doesn't want us to compete with one another, but to serve alongside each other.
Yeah. Which completely flips the script again.
Yeah.
It's like, it's that upside
everything.
down world, like the kingdom, you know?
Yeah, and I like that you said serve, because I was thinking about that word too. Like, it's easy to get into the entertainment industry or wherever you're at and think of it as, how can I obtain more? But when you think of it as like serving others, it just like humbles you, and you just like are thinking of only the best for those around you, and it becomes more of a selfless thing. And I think like that's really something Christ wants us to become, like selfless, but to love others, but love him first. Love him first.
Yeah.
So when we do that, when we serve and love him first, it just automatically, we're just loving on others.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Hi friends, just wanted to drop in and let you know that this video is sponsored by a ministry called Faithful Counseling. Faithful Counseling offers counseling for mental health from a biblical perspective. To get 10% off of your first month of therapy, go to my link, faithfulcounseling.com/thisdayministries. Preach, Brooklyn, preach.
So true.
So our other question we had was, so this podcast is called Consider the Lilies. So like mainly because we like look at the whole picture that God looks at the whole picture of our life, and he just wants us to consider the lilies in our lives. So where have you seen God consider the little and small things in your story lately?
I feel like there's so much. So currently looking back over just like the season I'm in right now, I think really it's trusting or the timing of God, or his plans, the timing and his ways in making those things happen. There's just been so much, like, I feel like trust sometimes is a hard thing for me to do because of like people have broken my trust, but yet, and I sometimes put that on God, but that's not truth, like God is the one that cannot break our trust. And so, I think just really showing me that like his plan is the best in little things in certain areas of my life. And even when maybe there's some other areas of my life that I don't see that timing coming yet. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, when is this going to happen? The little areas that I have seen God like move in lately has been growing my faith to be like, okay, I've trusted you with this, and see how good and how much better it is than I could have planned it or imagined. And that's helping me have faith for these other areas that I don't see coming to fruition yet, but I feel like you're leading me towards at one point, or like calling me eventually at some point to do. But yeah, I also feel like I miss little things so much, and it makes me mad. So I'm sure he's doing so many other things that right now I can't necessarily see, but in, a month, 3 months, 6 months, I'll look back and be like, oh, he did all of those things too at that time, which is so cool to be able to look back on.
Yeah, and I think like what you said, the waiting, that can be so tough because with the process of like your creative process, ooh, I'd love this to happen, right now it'd be nice, or just
like, isn't this the perfect timing, God? I think it is. Like,
oh yeah, this is great,
Yeah.
Line up, but it's so true. The waiting is really just what we really have to grasp. Like you said, the little things, if we could just like hold on and be like, okay, God's teaching me something right now. And like, if I don't pay attention, I'm going to miss that. And I don't want to miss that, So, and that's something in my life too. I've been having like, I'm working on these songs, and it's a waiting game. And I know, and it's just like a process, and you're just like, man, it'd be nice to release it now, but then you realize later on, there's a right timing for it. Like, because if it was too early or even too late, it would just not make sense. Like, it's just God's perfect timing. So if we could just hold on, just hold on to that. And he's teaching me something, and he's going to have it just at the right time, that was meant for whoever at that moment.
Exactly. And we may not even know that.
Yeah.
It may be something that we hear from somebody later, or it could be, I didn't know, but this person needed to hear this song, or hear these words, or hear it in that way, in that moment, that if we would have released it sooner or later, maybe it wouldn't have hit them at the same time or when they needed it. And so I think that's goes back to like the trusting thing of like trusting God to do that and just take it. And if we are serving him, then like we have to trust that he's going to do it and use it how he wants to, whether we see it or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so good.
Just scary and exciting. It's like just honest. It's like,
yeah, it's like the things where you're like, okay, like, is this gonna come through? Is this gonna work out? And you're just kind of like sitting there on the edge. Like it's like every meme on the internet where you're just like, okay, God, like, are you gonna come through? Are you gonna work it out?
Yeah.
But he ultimately always does. And I think it's just a testament of like just walking out your faith, like stepping, like when Jesus walked to Peter out on the water, and like Peter like had the faith, but then in the split second he didn't, and he started to sink. But
and that just made me think of like the Bible verse of, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief.
That's good.
Because it's like thinking of when he even was stepping out on the water, it's like he believed, and the second maybe he still believed, but it had just an ounce of that unbelief or doubt, he started sinking. And how fast that can happen in this world. And that's crazy. I never put those two together, actually.
It's a crazy, I feel like just this whole like industry in general, even now, like just the life that like us as like young women or young professionals, like if you're a guy and you're listening to this, like obviously you're a young professional. But, like it's just crazy that you have to have like such a walk of faith, because you don't, like, every day you have to wake up and like you don't know, like from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. you don't know what's going to happen in there. Like you can kind of guess, but you don't know. So it's just walking out and trusting that God's going to be with you every step.
Yes. And it's that like intentional planning, but yet having your hands open to say like, God, if this is not what you want me to do, or in the way or the timing or anything, or if it is what you want me to do, like it's still yours, but I'm going to be obedient in as much as I can.
100%.
Which is it should be such an easy thing, but I think because of like industry and the comparison thing, again, sometimes we make it so complicated as humans.
Okay, so you touched on this a little bit earlier, but Christian music, you said you came down here for country music. Go a little deeper. What inspired you to get to Christian music?
Yeah. Okay. Lots of things happened. So I grew up a Christian, Lutheran actually. And I remember, I wanted to do country music my entire life. So like, I'm talking like really young. And in preschool, there's a Christian band who came to our school for a school assembly. And I was like, wow, like that's so cool. And grew up in more of like a traditional Lutheran. So like hymnals every Sunday. It wasn't contemporary and stuff. But this band who came in preschool was contemporary music. So that was my first like, wow, that's so cool. Got all like the cassette tapes and CDs of everything. Every Christian thing I could, think of or find. And so loved that. But then once I moved here, leading worship at churches, that was contemporary music. That was like a huge game changer. Like in rehearsing those songs, like when the worship minister would send us the songs for that week, I just remember like so many moments of sitting in my bedroom listening to it for the first time and just like bawling my eyes out because of like how good God was. And I don't even know, it was just hitting me in a different way, that I knew God existed the whole time, but it was a real big like turning point for my faith of becoming from my head to like knowing it in my heart too, and having that relationship instead of just God's out there somewhere. But yeah, he's like here with us constantly, always interacting with us, whether we see it or not. So I think it was just a huge emotional thing for me, like just huge growth of faith and just growing as a person, but then also, I got to like lead worship for a small group before the devotion. So that really introduced me to even more music and gave me more opportunity to explore that. And then there was a publisher that I met in the beginning of 2018 that I had written one Christian song ever at that point. And he told me like, hey, you have a lot of potential. Let me talk to you. And like, we got coffee and stuff. And he's awesome. He's like set up some rights for me now. And then there's so many little details. Like I never told anybody that I was thinking and considering about doing Christian music. And except for my mom, who still is in Missouri and like didn't have any of these contexts that I was talking to, interacting with. And it was funny, like after leading worship at church, every once in a while, people would come up and be like, oh, you're doing Christian music now? And I was like, no, who told you that? And they were like, oh, nobody told me. I just thought you were. And I was like, it would make me mad. I was like, no, I'm doing country. And so I started writing a little more Christian music. And then I'd even go into some rights and be like, I'm writing country. And it would turn into a Christian song by the end of it, or have like a huge faith aspect to it, And then there was a few points, I had a couple of meetings with like a mentor, and it was very much like, it was one of those really hard meetings where like I played like 10 songs, and after every chorus, he was like, no, not good enough. Play me another one. And it was all these country songs. And so he's like, okay, we have time for one more. And so I was like, okay, it's Christian. And he was like, that's all right, like play it, And so he stopped me after the first chorus again. And I was like, oh no. And he was like, that's what you're supposed to do. He was like, I've always wondered like where your sound was going to fit exactly in country music or in the industry. But he was like, that's what you're supposed to do. That's why you moved here. And he was like that. I don't want it to be because I'm telling you to do it. And he became like very close family friends with me and stuff too, but like knows my family and stuff too now. And but he was like, I don't want you to do it because I'm telling you to do it. I want you to go home and think and pray about this, but that's why you moved here. And so that really hit me. There's a couple other interactions that happened, but for the next like 6 months, I really took that to prayer and like really trying to figure that out. What does that look like? Do I want to do it? Can I do both? How do I do both? Which one do I do? Like just all the things. And had a couple crazy dreams and like a little bit of like spiritual warfare, I believe, in making that decision. And but ultimately like went with Christian music and literally been the happiest. And like I don't write much country music anymore. From time to time I do, but my heart's just like really for writing Christian music now. And so I hope that like summed it up in a little bit, but it's a very long story.
No, I think it did.
Yeah, that's so beautiful to hear that, like the transition into that. Like it really wasn't like something that it was just like organically was just flowing.
Yes.
Because your faith, I think like it shows like you were so influenced by what God was doing in your life that it was just pouring out. And so it was just like, how can you contain that? How can you contain that of serving and loving on and what God is doing in your life? And so and I get that too, because when I was younger, I mean, it was funny because I used to try to write like love songs or whatever. And it's cheesy, like very cheesy, but like I've noticed like the most genuine lyrics from me is like just being honest about where I'm at with God, like where's the journey that God's taken me on, and like just the source of strength that He is. And I think that like just letting that out in the most honest way, because it's real, it's real in your life, it's a real. And I think that's what really connects with people. Like if you're so genuine about that, and it's like it's really happening in your life, people are like they can sense the realness and the rawness of your lyrics. So that's really special that it was just pouring out of you like that,
Yeah. It's one of those things looking back, like connecting all the dots again of like, oh, this happened and then this happened and then this happened. It's like in the moment I was like, whoa, what's happening? But now looking back over it, it's really cool to see how it all kind of attached and what God was doing and sending certain people into my life at the time.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Our next question is, your latest single is called Alpha and Omega. So what was the behind the song?
Yeah, so that one we really wanted to just have an upbeat, fun worship song that people could like sing along to right away. That was very biblical. So it obviously, like, there's lots of verses in Revelation. Revelation 1:8 was like one of the main ones that we used, for I am the Alpha and Omega, who was and is to come. And then later in Revelations, it says, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. And that's literally the bridge. But it was definitely one we wanted people to be able to sing along to it. We wanted to sing like the song that it says that the angels are singing in heaven, you know, that holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And like, how much more true could that be? And like how he has been that Alpha and Omega in my own personal life, but he continues to be, and he will always be, either on earth or in heaven.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that you said you wanted it to be like upbeat, but the biblical aspect, I think that's important. Like that you said that, because we want to speak what the Bible says, which is the truth of who he is. And so,
yes.
So awesome. I'm really excited about that. And I did hear the song, and I do love it. I think it's really fun. Right at the beginning, you were like, oh, we're going to I was like,
Brooklyn, can we get a replay of the motion that you just did? Like the
I love it. Praise hands, jazz hands.
Honestly, that could be a meme.
It could. That's amazing. I love that.
Not jazz hands, praise hands.
Praise hands. That's amazing. I love that.
I'm obsessed with that. I think that was my favorite part of this whole podcast.
And next time I hear Rachel sing in a public setting, I'll be
We'll come to one of these shows.
Please come and be like,
I will. I'll have to find a way to get to wherever you're at and just go.
Yes, that's amazing. I love it. Do it.
No, Rachel, how can people, can you tease what you have coming up next?
Yeah.
Like, how can people keep up with you? Tell us all the things.
Okay, so next single, it is pretty much almost finished, but I'm releasing it in January to like kick off the new year. So be looking at that, and then or for that, I guess. But that one is really about how I think I kind of touched on it earlier, but how it became from my head to like really believing it with my whole heart and becoming that relationship with God. It's called Whole Heart. I wrote it with some of my friends, Alex Wart and Katie Reynolds, and Alex is producing it. And I'm excited. It's kind of a testimony song in a way of like how God did that and how I grew up. You know, one of the lyrics is like, I grew up in the second to the last pew, hearing sermons of God's love, you know, and because that was a part of my story. Like I grew up in the faith and I loved Jesus and believed in him with my whole heart, really. But like it really became such a relationship and so much more real and true when I moved away from home, when I came to Nashville, when things just started happening, you know, more trials, more good things, more bad things, like just all of it, and how God was that constant the entire time. So I have rachelseiler.com. That has all the links to everything else. I have music on wherever you listen to music, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, YouTube. I'm trying to think now, what else is there? All the things. And then any social media will be Rachel Seiler Music, that you can stay connected that way. And that helps a lot.
Spell your last name so that people spell it right for you.
Yes. Okay. So Rachel is Rachel, and then Seiler is Seiler. Think of it like German.
I love that.
Seiler. I after the E. But
oh, that's great. Well, thank you, Rachel, for coming on and sharing your testimony, your story, and what God's doing in your life. It's just so beautiful to see just what God is like doing continuously through what you're sharing with your gifts and all of that. So I'm excited.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Awesome. I love you guys. It's so fun.
Like, no, we love you. Like, you're just like Brooklyn said, like it's incredible to see how God's using you and how he's writing your story in so many ways more than you could ever have imagined.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
Sure.